So joining us today is Dr. Leena Kanzode. She's come all the way over here to discuss things like sleep, sleep benefits, how it can help teens, basically the role of sleep in the life of a teen. She's a sleep psychologist. And can we get a warm welcome for Dr. Leena Kanzode?
So thank you, Pooja and Ananya. Thanks for having me, and thank you for everybody sitting across me for making it on a busy Saturday afternoon. We live in a very busy area where there's lots going on, so taking time out for something like this is truly appreciated. I like the session to be interactive. I'm delighted to see a lot of children and teens also come join us. So I want everybody to participate. The goal is to kind of understand this issue together and come up with solutions together. Of course, I have some scientific kind of research supporting to some of the solutions, but I would love everyone to chime in and make this like an interactive session. So I will quickly kind of tell a little bit more about me. So I'm a child, adolescent, and adult psychiatrist, and I did my adult and child training from Stanford, and I'm an adjunct clinical faculty at Stanford, so I teach there at this time for the last 5 years. And then, a couple years ago, I co-founded a nonprofit called Tarika Foundation, and this was kind of in wake of all the teen problems we are seeing in our area. So of course, I see a lot of teens in my office coming in with a lot of emotional issues and pain and self-harm, and we all have heard about the teen suicides in our area as well. So all of that was certainly very, very heartbreaking for me, and I did some soul searching, and 2 years ago I felt like I have to do something about it within kind of the professional training and background I have. How can I kind of do something in the community, for the community? And so I, spoke to a couple colleagues or child psychiatry colleagues actually, who had similar kind of intention, and they were ready to come on board, and here we go. We formed this nonprofit, Tarika. Tarika means little stars, as some of you may know. So since it's all about children, that's the name we chose. And our goal is, more around prevention is better than cure. And our mission is to create mental health awareness in children and teens. And we do that by going into community, conducting educational talks, workshops, teaching stress management skills like mindfulness. So we run mindfulness groups for parents and younger kids 8 to 12-year-olds, and then also teens 13 to 18-year-olds as a separate group by themselves. So, I did bring in my brochures and some cards. I'll bring them out right after the talk if you're interested to learn more. We also go into school, and PTOs and PTAs at schools organize our talks as well. So there's various ways we can come and deliver our expertise if that could help your community. All right, so kind of going back to the question we, started with, why is sleep important? What would you guys like say about that? Let's see what people think about why is sleep important. And I would love to hear from kids. No pressure. If you feel comfortable sharing something, you can raise your hand and share what your understanding is why sleep is important. Anyone? Anyone amongst the parents? Yes.
There's a microphone. Kindly use that.
Sleep is the most important for our daily routine work. I'm also suffering from insomnia.
Mm-hmm.
Since insomnia is the most difficult ailment, and it is for the patient who are suffering from depression.
That's right.
That is depression not only simple depression, bipolar depression.
Mm-hmm.
And since my birth up to 25 years, I was having sleep, heavy sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, sleep was very deep sleep,
Mm-hmm.
and it was very troubling me.
Okay.
And no importance, not remembering anything.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a ulcer in the mouth, constipation.
So I will meet you after this thing, but I want to keep this as a high school level kids.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think the point that I think he was trying to highlight was that sleep is such a big part of our well-being, and it does get impaired in certain medical conditions like in bipolar or depression, and we don't want to get there, right? We want to get in a place where we can understand the importance of good quality sleep and good quality and quantity of sleep, and we therefore can take care of that basic building block of our well-being, so we don't get to a place where we start having medical issues.
Yeah, so also they say the sleep refreshes and repairs the body,
Mm-hmm.
especially in the kids, they grow in the sleep, that's what they say.
That is so true. So, the growth hormone, that's the hormone that helps us grow, especially relevant for kids, is secreted when we sleep. Do you guys know that? So it is really, not just restorative for our just body to rest and for our organs to rest and repair, but it is also a time when you grow, just not physically, but also cognitively, like in terms of your intellectual ability, in terms of your emotional ability. There's a lot of restoration, a lot of good, healing that goes on in our body that happens during sleep. So, what we know is that there's umpteen number of benefits. Oh, were there more people wanting to just say something? Yeah, please go ahead.
I think you covered a couple of them already, but I was going to say that at least from the times when we were teenagers, we didn't have all these distractions, and so the sleep automatically happened.
Right.
And when I look back and when I look at some of the current generations, I feel that the stress levels have gone up,
Mm-hmm.
and that partly is because not enough sleep or irregular sleep. There is a could affect metabolism
Mm-hmm.
that directly or indirectly affects growth. Then energy levels because of that, and alertness and cognition.
That's
So
right.
that's kind of, and maybe that's also leading into issues such as attention deficiency and things like that. So.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, there is, like it's almost like a cascade of things. I'll get to you. Just, let me cover a few points, and I absolutely would love to everybody to kind of participate and share their thoughts. So, just kind of building on what you were saying, it does affect literally a lot of different parts of our body. Going from immune system to energy levels to memory and physical health, and because metabolism is also stimulated when we sleep. Not sleeping can also lead to weight problems. So we are understanding a lot more and more as we are seeing, because of shift in our lifestyles and not getting enough sleep, we are seeing a rise in medical issues, and one of the factors is found to be sleep deprivation. Yes, I had somebody wanted to speak.
I just wanted to address the weight loss, which you did mention, because when people don't have enough sleep, they tend to eat more.
Mm-hmm.
Either you're watching TV or you are not conscious of what they're eating. And then on top of that, in the morning, when you're walking, there's a tendency to eat and drink more coffee or have more snacks. And sometimes people could mistake whatever lack of sleep to staying up by eating more. So there is weight gain if you're not having constant sleep. And so that's one of the, I'm Weight Watchers, and I know that's one of the things we've been discussing is how to be able to have sufficient sleep, the same time to go to sleep, consistency, so that it doesn't affect how your day goes the following day.
That's true. That's actually really right on. I think you covered like the really important aspect of how sleep and food are also connected and how that connects to our metabolism, weight management. And so we'll get into, a little bit more understanding about how that can be used, this understanding about, food and not eating late at night, also as a way to manage our sleep. Kind of will cover a lot of aspects of this under the topic of sleep hygiene. Okay, so moving along. So the next question I have is kind of connected to the kind of discussion we just had, is what does sleep deprivation result into? So since we heard a lot about some of the benefits about getting good quality and quantity of sleep, can people think about what kind of price we have to pay if we are sleep deprived? Anyone from the kids group, since you heard a few kind of pointers about the benefits, so when the benefits are gone, what could happen? Oh, okay. Parents, yes?
So your mind is not alert. Either you're kind of walking or doing something, whatever activity, or driving. You're not alert because your lack of sleep makes you feel not being energetic and not alert to respond to whatever you're hearing. So your actions are a little bit lack.
Right. It can lead to safety issues. Right. If you are not alert and you're driving, we have cases where people have had accidents because they were sleep deprived and they kind of, had they went into like a little bout of sleep behind the wheel, and that led to a safety problem for others. Any other things?
Pretty much like what you covered earlier, right?
Yeah.
Low energy, low immune system, and then low attention.
Yeah.
Right. Then what was that? Weight gain.
Weight gain.
Yeah, pretty much those things.
The whole thing, right? So actually, there is. I mean, I got only a few things up here, but there is more than what I can show you on this slide. So concentration is affected. You're distracted much more. Your attention span is lowered. Organizational skills are affected. Your motivation is affected. Your mood is affected. Kids or even adults, when we don't get enough sleep, I can say that for myself. I'm the grumpiest person the next day if I didn't sleep well the night before. Easily frustrated, our frustration tolerance is lowered, so little things can upset you and you can have a big reaction to things that don't really, need to be reacted that way. And then, if this goes on for a long time, we can see problems like anxiety, depression, more of defiant behaviors in kids and whatnot. So, obesity, there is like tons of kind of ripple effect from this problem that we notice from one thing, simple thing. We think sleep is like, what a big deal. Like if I didn't sleep X many hours, so what does it do? It cumulatively, if you're sleep deprived every single day, back to back, or for a while, it does really take a toll on our body. So let me ask this question to the parents here. How much sleep do you think your teen or your child should get? 8 to 10 hours? Yes? Around 13 hours? Okay. Any other numbers? 7 again? 8 plus hours. Yeah, so, I have this nice chart about how our sleep needs change based on which stage of life your child is in. So, of course, when they are infants, they need a lot of sleep, right? Half of their days go on in sleeping, so they sleep for 15 to 18 hours. And then, it's a little bit reduced by the time they get to a year old. And then 3 to 6 years is 10 to 12 hours. 7 to 11 years or 12 years old is 10 to 11. And then by teenage, it is definitely, we have kind of studied this based on research that teens need at least 8 or if not 10 hours of sleep. So, this is, something I don't think we are seeing our kids really from this preteen to teen age. Do you think, are they getting enough sleep these days? Are they following the required kind of guidelines of how much sleep they should be getting? No, right? And let's figure out why. So, why do we think that is happening?
I think most important reason, at least for my daughter, actually what happened was her homework was going until like 2 o'clock in the night, and that must be because of social media and all that stuff. They may be extending it.
Yeah.
And school is at 8 o'clock, so you have to get up early. So of course you are not going to. That must be the case with almost all the kids in America, most probably.
Right. So, we will get into, all the different factors about why that's been happening as we go through the presentation. But, let me give you a little bit of statistics on what a recent, study showed. So, the recommended hours, oops, sorry, I pressed the wrong button. So the recommended hours is 8 to 10 for teens. And a large study that was done recently in 2010 actually showed only 8% of our high school students get that much sleep. And 23% get only about 6 hours and 10% get only 5 hours. So that's unfortunate reality of our time now. This is how much teens are sleeping when they are supposed to be getting 8 to 10 hours. They are getting only 5 to 6, majority of them, and only a very small percentage is getting what's recommended. And that's another, on an average it ranges from 6.5 to 7.5 hours on school nights. So let's get a little bit of understanding why teens need that much sleep, and what also goes on why they can't get that much sleep, besides the factor of school, homework, social media, and of course, all those things add to it. But let's kind of understand the science behind sleep and how that also plays into the adolescence, right? So what we know is that this is just a kind of a quick kind of review on how our sleep is structured. So it's divided into two big phases: non-REM sleep, which is known as non-rapid eye movement sleep, and then that's followed by the REM sleep, or rapid eye movement sleep. And non-REM is divided into 3 stages. Stage 1, where you're slightly beginning to have that drowsiness and deep sleep is slowly to begin. Then here, you are more, stable sleep happens. By stage 3, deep sleep happens, and that's where the growth hormone is released. Right, we were talking about that earlier. And then we cycle into this REM sleep. That's where, really the restoration happens. That's where all the restoration and healing that needs to happen for all our different systems happens. And that's also a sleep where people dream. So that's your deepest phase of sleep. And we cycle through these, we kind of go into this cycle every 90 to 120 minutes. Okay, so you go from non-REM, REM, then you go back into non-REM, REM, and we're kind of shuffling between these stages of sleep. So in teens, the onset is where there is a shift. And I'll actually take us to our next slide. So let's understand what happens to the teens, right? So what's really different about it in adolescence. So, the black line here is kind of a typical adult, sleep wave. So there is a biological clock in our brain, or circadian clock or rhythm as we say, that actually is the one that takes care of our ability to fall asleep and wake up. And that's very much sensitive to any kind of change in routine, change in schedule, change in daylight. So it's a very sensitive biological clock. But, for the most part, for adults, we start feeling kind of sleepy around, say, 9 or 10 p.m. For teens, that spike of release of this hormone called melatonin is delayed by a couple hours. So a lot of the times parents say, I switched off the internet, I sat with them, they finished their homework, I made them go to bed at 10 o'clock, but they were still not able to fall asleep till midnight, and so what can I do? And so, your kid may not be really sneaking and doing something, like still getting their device and doing, something on the phone, or, if you feel like you are monitoring and they're listening to you, a lot of the time still the teen is sleep deprived, because even though they get to bed earlier, because of this physiological change in their sleep cycle, where the release of the melatonin is naturally postponed by a couple hours, they don't really sleep until later, after 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock. That's when actually they feel sleepy, unlike you and I, who may start sleeping around 9 or 10. So that's important to keep in mind, because there is a lot of conflict often I see in my work between parents and kids around this, like, we are trying to get you to bed, we are turning off the lights, we are creating an environment to calm down, everybody puts their devices on the charging station, blah, blah, blah. But why is, that he doesn't sleep till midnight, and then he's having a hard time waking up for school in the morning. So this is kind of partly why that this is, just how their natural rhythm is built. They are in that what we call as a delayed phase, a delayed, sleep-wake cycle. So they tend to feel more sleepy around closer to midnight, and then then of course their the clock is shifted, so they can't wake up at 6:37. They probably would be, more restored by 8 or 9 a.m. Right? But then of course, as someone pointed out, the schools don't take that into account. The schools start at 7:30 or 8, which forces them to wake up earlier, and that leads to sleep deprivation. So this is kind of why a lot of them are sleeping in the classroom, or not feeling so alert, or having to, then look at drinking coffee and tea or whatnot to wake themselves. So what we also know is that, adolescence is like a perfect storm from different perspectives. And especially if we look at sleep just by itself as a slice of well-being, there is a lot going on, right? So they have this delayed circadian phase, so their natural tendency to be able to fall asleep is delayed biologically because of how their brain is and what's happening physiologically. And then, there's something called as the sleep pressure being rising, meaning like I feel sleepy. When we say in a lay language, I feel sleepy when, around this time, after reading for 20 minutes, I feel really like I just have to drop the book and I can close my eyes and I can fall asleep in a second. So that's like our sleep pressures rise, but in kids or teens, but particularly, there is a slow buildup of sleep pressure. And so there is that, plus, as you guys were talking about, there's academic pressures, and there's bedtime autonomy, because, after a while parents say, okay, this is your room, you put this away and you can sleep. So they get that autonomy of driving their cycle, right? Then they may sometimes making excuse, I have homework and I need to finish work, so you really can't say much, and you say, okay, finish your homework and try to sleep as early as you can. And then, technology, thanks to the social media, technology has done a lot of good to us, but we are now understanding a lot of cost that we are also paying from excessive use of screen and technology. We'll come to that as well. And then the societal pressure of early school start time doesn't really help then to, get enough sleep at night, and then that's what leads to this short sleep. So, it is a perfect storm of all kinds of pressure from all directions for the kids, and that's where we have to come up with a plan to have them deal with this. So we'll get into that. So, and then what happens? Once this one night of short sleep happens, what happens the next night, and the next night, and the next night? What do you think? Do you see that they're consistently getting only 6-7 hours Monday through Friday? Or do you see that it's only one off night for your child? Consistently, right? Like they are in that cycle. And so this is like a vicious cycle then we get into. So late bedtime, your sleep debt is rising. Then, what then we do, or as parents, we let them sleep in on weekends because we are like, poor thing, they haven't slept much over the week and this is their only day to catch up. So let them have as much sleep on the weekends. Let's not make them up till like noon or afternoon because they really have a lot of catch up to do. So they sleep late on weekends, which further reinforces the circadian delay. So that gives a message to our biological clock, it's okay to fire late. Already it's kind of like that, but then when we are switching the sleep phase to sleeping late and waking up late, we are reinforcing that and telling our biological clock to say, okay, that's the pattern, let's kind of continue. And then, that leads to problems going to sleep at night. And then that cycle continues. Sometimes that leads to issues like afternoon napping, because after a while, kids are like, in so much deficit that they come back from school and straight they go for a couple hours of nap. And we know that the napping makes them not want to get to bed earlier at night. And then here we are constantly in this cycle of making it worse over and again. Do you guys get it? Any questions about that?
So I have a question. So if a person or anybody sleeps in the afternoon or throughout the day, and he sleeps really well in the day, he is not going to sleep in the night, right? So is that true sentence, or in the night?
Yeah, so what we know based on, again, sleep research is that ideally one should not take any naps in the afternoon.
Really?
Ideally. That's really the best thing for our sleep hygiene, or for us to have a guaranteed good sleep routine at night. But if you are really forced, whether it's because you had a late night the night before, or you have a medical health issue or whatnot, and you're forced to sleep, they say do not sleep more than 30 minutes to 45 minutes during the afternoon. So you actually set up an alarm. You don't, usually it's like unheard of, you never set up alarms for naps. But for this, they say you set up an alarm because you are going to have that same non-REM, REM cycle, you're going to split into this deep sleep. And so for you to not go from one cycle to the next, which is 90 minutes long on an average in most people. So the idea is that once I'm finished with non-REM to REM cycle in that 90-minute period, which is an hour and a half, if I'm sleeping more than that, I'm going to keep wanting to sleep more and more. Then my brain stops differentiating is it day or night, because that cycle has been started. So we don't want to get into that rhythm. Therefore, cutting your nap and not getting into REM and cutting it where you are in non-REM sleep in that first 3 stages, that's when you are able to easily get up, and that can be a restorative sleep enough for you to keep going. So naps is really, really a problem. All right, so now that we know that getting good sleep is critical for our well-being, we know there are a lot of things we have to suffer from if we don't get good quality and quantity of sleep. Like it affects your alertness, focus, concentration, distraction, energy levels, motivation, can lead to emotional issues, can lead to medical issues over time. Now that we've understood that, do you feel like you want to learn something about how to get good sleep? Yes, I think, does it convince you enough that this is a really important thing? Like, unless we find something convincing, we don't work towards it. And what my understanding is that as a physician, I see that, kids usually don't know how important sleep is. Like what it does to your body. Why is it that your parents are after you to get to bed at a certain time and wake up at a certain time? Why is there so much emphasis on, sleeping enough and sleeping, properly? Because it's a very important building block of our well-being. And so once we know this is something that is so important, we like to work towards it, right? So what can teens do? I'll come to different things everybody can do because it's a joint effort. Teens have to do their part, parents have to do their part, and as a community, maybe schools have to do their part too, because we need to address this from every angle to break that vicious cycle we were talking about, right? So, one thing that teens can start doing is practice sleep hygiene, and I have a slide coming up on sleep hygiene specifically, but there was also a handout I had emailed about points that can be reminded of about sleep hygiene stuff that we had I'll be going over, and so you will have it with you to remember the things. So what is sleep hygiene? The term hygiene means what? Kids? So we do a great job cleaning our body, cleaning everything. Hygiene is such an important aspect of keeping good health, right? And so what research has shown us that if we also have some discipline, some practical ways of how we manage our sleep, and they call it as sleep hygiene, we can really have good sleep. So what are some of the things they found out? They actually, this is very much research based, these recommendations, and I'll be going over one by one in a second. But what they did was they had a study where they had kids who followed sleep hygiene, and then another group of kids who did not follow sleep hygiene and actually took a sleep medication to help them sleep, a sleep aid or sleep medication. And they followed them for 2 weeks, and what they found was the group that practiced sleep hygiene, that group was the one who reported better quality of sleep, and their numbers on their concentration, ability to do schoolwork, finishing homework, getting good grades, all of that was much better than people who were trying to sleep artificially by taking sleep medicine. So it's that powerful. So what do we know about that? So the first thing is going to bed at the same time and waking up at the same time. So if I know that I need X number of hours of sleep, so I'm going to set my going to bed time accordingly. So if my body requires 8 hours of sleep, I'm not going to sleep at midnight and wake up at 6. That's going to give me only 6 hours. So I'm going to go to bed at 10 and wake up at 8 to get that 8 hours of sleep, right? So you figure out a time to go to bed and time to wake up. In between the two, the more important one is waking up at the same time. So no matter what time you went to bed last night, even if you had a late night or you stayed up to finish one more assignment or you had other things to do, even if you slept at 11 or 11:30 instead of your regular 10 o'clock time, for instance, then you still wake up at 8 o'clock the next morning or 6 o'clock the next morning, whatever, your regular wake up time. So I shouldn't say, oh, I slept late, so I should sleep in. Because what we know is that biological clock is so sensitive that if I push up my wake-up time, then it slowly delays the sleeping time that next night. So you would say, oh, then I'm sleep deprived. I haven't gotten my full 8 hours. I got only 6.5 hours. So what do I do about that? And so the natural tendency in that case is to take an afternoon nap, because you have to wake up in the morning. You have to send your kids to the school. You have other things that you have to do on time. So you wake up and then you're like, oh, I'm tired. Let me take a nap. So like I was mentioning earlier, they say that don't take a nap as far as possible. So it's hard, it's not easy to fight that urge, but if you can find a way to go for a walk or just do a 5-minute just lay down and do some breathing or relaxation exercise or meditation, or another way to just get some rest in a way, or set up an alarm and really punctually wake up in 30 minutes to 45 minutes, no more than that of nap, then your biological clock is still ready to fire at the same time. It's going to release that melatonin around 9:30, 10 at the night time, and you are going to fall asleep on time. So, that's what we kind of talk a lot about. So no matter what time you went to bed, wake-up time should be the same. So now coming to kids, like especially teens who have after school activity, and they are playing a sport or some competitive thing after school, so they get to their homework only at 6:37, and then they need some downtime. They are distracted with social media, they are procrastinating, they are getting to their homework, finally it's like midnight and now they are finishing the homework. So that can definitely push the clock for them, and so they are sleep deprived, and then they have to wake up at the same time because school starts at XYZ time next day, right? So how do we do that with teens? So the recommendation is that we really work on getting them to sleep earlier, and that's where teens have to do their part. And I'll tell you, what other things you can do, and not allow them or not have them take a nap, and often they may not have time to take a nap, but really focus on keeping that schedule as consistent as possible. And then on weekends, when we have this mercy on our kids, like, oh my gosh, they're so tired, let them sleep in. So they're not saying don't let them sleep in, because it's understandable that no matter how much discipline you instill, there will be a problem for them to really get the amount of sleep they need because of the demands they have. So the recommendation is that maybe an hour or 2 more than their regular wake-up time should be allowed. But it shouldn't be 4 plus 5 plus hours from their wake-up time. So if your kid is waking up at 6:37, they can wake up at 8:30 or 9 on weekends. But it's really important to get them up and running on the weekends at a reasonable time, because having them sleep in too long can be, again, you're precipitating that vicious cycle. So going to bed and waking up at the same time, the first very key principle. And the second one is, so let me actually, so we have to get through a few slides. So let me go over the sleep hygiene when I have the sleep hygiene slide come up, but I kind of covered a lot of it. So teens have to do a especially good job to learn to stop procrastinating, because yes, you need your downtime, you need all those like breaks in between. You rather have a good study skill, study habit where you're like, okay, I'm going to structure it 40 minutes of studying and 5-10 minutes of break. And then I'm coming back to it. I rather have you do one thing at a time rather than multitasking, because that also distracts you, makes you spend your energy more, and so that can be pretty difficult. So procrastination, better time management skills, better study habits, and then really complying with your parents' request of detaching from electronics at least an hour before bed. And I guess most of you know why that's important. Again, there is science behind that. The what you are doing in terms of homework or watching a show is not so much of a problem. The problem is the blue light that's emitted by the devices. So the devices have this blue light that inhibit the release of melatonin, which is this good hormone that helps us fall asleep. And so if you're exposed to devices for a long time, that blue light inhibits the release, and therefore your sleep ability to fall asleep is further pushed past midnight. So what is sleep hygiene? So going to bed and waking up at the same time, avoiding caffeine consumption. So no caffeine, caffeinated sodas, drinks after 3 p.m. in the afternoon. Exposure to bright light in the morning. So bright light actually helps our biological clock to come back into the sync of, because melatonin is secreted when it gets dark, when the sunlight is gone. So exposing that keeps our biological clock in check. Making room really a place for sleep. Using your bed only for sleeping, so no studying, reading on your bed. We say have a chair next to your bed or a desk where you're working, and when you're feeling like I'm drifting to go to sleep, that's when you come and sleep in your bed. So this conditioning, this association that bed is only for sleep is strongly developed, and you can hit the bed and fall asleep. And then do not go bed feeling hungry. So at the same time, don't eat a heavy meal. So having a light meal really is what helps. A relaxation routine, bathing, music, reading, relaxation, deep breathing exercises, keeping technology outside of room, and exercising. So exercising also not closer to bedtime. 2 hours before your bedtime, your exercise needs to be done, because that can be stimulating and activating that can again not let you fall asleep. And as far as possible, no pets in your bedroom. Again, it's a distraction. So if people who have pets, they love to sleep with their pets, that's also discouraged. So, there's different types of relaxation exercises. There can be just breathing exercises. There is progressive muscle relaxation, tightening and contraction of muscles from toes to head, along with breathing, mindfulness practices, meditation, guided visualization. There's different ways to calm our mind and, do sleep promoting activities. Warm shower before going to bed, a cup of warm milk because it has tryptophan. It's supposed to help with falling asleep. So our old, time rule where grandma and mom would say, have a cup of milk before sleeping is actually scientifically based. So what can parents do? Parents have to really, be at their best. I know it's a tussle to deal with teens, especially because they start to have their own personality and voice. So, but you are parents. They are still teens, they are not 18 years old yet. So you need to take a stand and say, we will have a limit on this is the time you are going to study, this is the time lights go off, this is the time devices go off, this is the time you are going to bed. You facilitate that consistency of falling and waking up at the same time. Limit screen time. Discourage snacking. So as we were talking earlier, eating at bedtime or having snacks, especially they like to eat high-fat snacks like chips and things like that, that actually does seem to affect your ability to fall asleep. And simplify their life. What that means is, you have to keep in mind that you can't overschedule your child. Even though you are in an area where every kid is doing 10 different things and their college application is going to look better than your child's, you want to ultimately look at what's good for their well-being and what's in their best interest. Right? So simplifying and doing things that seem meaningful to them. I like this, okay, you will do this. If you're doing a sport after school, we will finish this practice, you will come, you will not procrastinate, finish your homework first, then use your time to unwind, having some discipline around that. And you can model it. If you model it, like if you're working, you can say, I work just like you do, and when I come, I finish this, and then I this, and then I do this. So if you're able to model it, if you can throw away your phone, put it at the charging station, everybody in the family is doing it, the kids get the buy-in to do it. I'm so sorry. And then, help them with time management, study skills, talk about your experiences, how they maybe can make flashcards, what could be a way to enhance their productivity. Making sure they are using bed only for sleep, and then, giving them some exercise during the day, exposing them to the daylight. What should schools do? So I think this is an ongoing fight that a lot of school districts are having. Some schools are able to follow through and push their start time to a little bit later. Some schools are not. They have their own reasons for why they can't do that, but some schools, have followed through. But there is really good reason why schools should also help us with this, because of the natural biological shift in the kids' sleep cycle that happens. So really quickly, I'll talk more about this after we finish. If you guys have more, if you need more information about this, there is a newer type of therapy called cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. So for kids or people who have struggled with sleeping, despite of following sleep hygiene and they are doing everything right, but they are still having sleep problems, or they are actually having other medical issues like anxiety disorders or depression. We have lots of research now that cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia is a really effective therapy that can help you get your sleep back in order. So there are therapists who specialize in this, and the good news is that we now actually have a free app called CBTI Coach that can guide you through, managing your sleep habits and help you kind of figure that out yourself. So take-home points are: sleep is one of our biggest building blocks for our well-being. Teens need more sleep than they are getting, so we all need to take charge, parents and teens, and do their part. And sleep hygiene works, and it is really not difficult to follow. It may seem very difficult to follow the first couple days or first 2-3 days where you're struggling to not nap, where you're feeling, it's almost better for you to go to bed earlier that day when you have like deficit from previous night than taking a nap and pushing your cycle. So if you're tired that day, go to bed half an hour early, and slowly you can get that on track. But it seems very difficult, but it is not. And CBTI actually incorporates a lot of sleep hygiene. That type of therapy has incorporated a lot of sleep hygiene principles. So thank you very much. I'm here to answer any questions, and let me know if anything was unclear during the presentation. Yes. Yeah.
You talked about napping, right? You don't recommend napping, but can you talk about power napping? Is that really useful?
Yeah, so I think I was mentioning that taking short naps, ideally no naps, but if you want to nap, you should not sleep more than 30 minutes. So power naps are okay, but you need to be then disciplined enough to wake up at that 30-minute time, right? That's the slippery slope usually. Yes.
So, if a person wakes up in the middle of the night, so what techniques can they use? If a person wakes up in the middle of the night, what techniques can they use to get back to sleep?
That's a very good question. So what we know is that, if you are finding yourself, you woke up in the middle of the night, whether it's because you went to the bathroom and then suddenly you remembered, oh, I have a test tomorrow, or I have this important meeting tomorrow, and your brain starts going and you start worrying or thinking about it, then they say that it's really not a good idea to come back to bed and toss and turn. If you're finding yourself tossing and turning for 5 to 10 minutes and you're not able to fall back asleep, then you get up. So get up from your bed, take a stroll, sit and read or deep breathe, do a relaxation exercise, listen to a calm music, really kind of switch gears at that point, go back to the sleep promoting activities, and then come and fall asleep. Because we don't want to build this association of bed as a place where we are tossing and turning. Bed is a place where there should be this strong association the brain develops conditioning wise. If I hit this, I fall asleep. And staying in bed, tossing and turning seems to really perpetuate the cycle. So doing other things that takes your mind off of it. And what we know is any monotonous thing you do helps us fall asleep. So reading, listening to any music, breathing, counting to 1 to 100 or 100 to 1, there's like few other strategies people talk about. So monotony, any monotonous thing you do is what kind of helps us to drift to sleep.
So if I may just a minute, I know parents are really excited to ask a lot of questions, but we do really want to make sure our high schoolers over here get an opportunity to. Are there any questions at the top of your mind that you'd like to ask?
And no question is a stupid question or a bad question or a wrong question. So nobody is judging you. Just, ask whatever you think. Or if you have a comment like, I feel like this is all sounds good in the talk, but it's really not practical in my life. Whatever you may have to say, this is a place for you to bring it up. And if it's uncomfortable to stand up and ask a question, you can also write it or tell one of the moderators what you want to ask and they can translate it for you. That's also fine.
Following this, we will also have group activity.
Okay.
That will also facilitate
Help them to interact.
Into more questions. So keep those questions up there. If you'd like to ask right away, feel free to do so. Otherwise, let's discuss it in the group activity. Sorry, didn't mean to
No, I think it's important to hear from the youngsters because they are in a different boat and they may have their own points that they may have questions about or comments about. Mm-hmm.
So this the dark circle below the eye, is it because of the poor health or sleep deprivation?
So there is, sleep deprivation can make it a little bit more prominent. There's aspect of that. But a lot of people actually tend to have iron deficiency anemia. If they're perpetually having dark circles, and then that seems to definitely get worse if you're sleep deprived, that's a different thing. But there can be some deficiency of vitamins and minerals is what we understand that could contribute that. So it's good to check it out, and sometimes it could be just a hereditary thing that kind of runs in the family and it's just one of your features, I guess.
And any tips to get out of the bed in the morning at the same time? When the alarm goes off, you tend to sleep late, so.
I know. So, so this question is kind of difficult to kind of answer in a way because, yes, we tend to, sometimes we snooze the alarm or we say, oh, I'm waking up, I heard it, I'm waking up in 5 minutes, and we tend to drift into a new cycle of sleep. So all of us do that, I do that too, and so what I find it helpful is I actually keep my alarm not next to my bedside, not next to the side table where it's accessible. I keep it, these days with smartphones, I'm using my phone alarm, right? So I keep it at the charging station on a desk, which is slightly away from my bed. And so I have to actually get up to switch it off. So once I'm up, then there's a less likely chance for me to go back and kind of laze around. Because then I'm up and I'm already like standing and a little bit more alert and oriented. Uh-huh. Absolutely. So if you are in a good sleep rhythm or sleep hygiene, then your body naturally wakes you up at the same time. So it's actually, our biological clock is so correct that it does let us go to sleep at the same time and wake up at the same time. So it's all about being in that rhythm. If you're keeping that rhythm, you don't need alarm clock unless you're planning to wake up earlier than usual wake up time. Yes?
A couple of things. So I was going to say how everybody is so different. Something might work for some people, some things might not work for me. So with all those tools, it's good to apply what might work for me, might not work for someone else, right?
Yes.
And then at the same time, I wanted also to add, I know you gave us a graph about when kids fall asleep and when adults fall asleep. But I do know I know someone who doesn't fall asleep, can only sleep 2 hours a night. Do you have the resources do you have resources for adults, or you only have for children?
So the sleep hygiene principles work for kids and adults both. The CBTI app that I was talking about, the cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia app, that's actually free, has a lot of coaching around how you can get your sleep, back into the rhythm. It would be important to evaluate whoever you're talking about, if there is anything going on in terms of other psychological conditions that have made their sleep further worse, like depression, anxiety disorders, psychological conditions like that can really impair your sleep a lot. So in those cases, they may need to go on a sleep aid for some time. Sometimes we say you do the natural over-the-counter melatonin, which is the hormone that's secreted naturally, for a few days, especially like when you're getting your teens sleep back into routine. A lot of parents come and say, but it's really hard for them to, like, we've managed to get the devices off, we've gotten their homework done on time, we've gotten them to the bed on time, but they're just not sleeping until past midnight. So we say, okay, let's, the correction for the biological clock happens very gradually. So while that's happening, let's try to give little support by giving them some melatonin to facilitate falling asleep earlier. And as they're going to bed earlier, they're going to start waking up earlier, and that whole cycle starts to kind of come back into the rhythm. So I would say that they should look into other things that might be going on that could be helped. Yeah.
So we will keep our program on track and allow our MCs to proceed with the program. I'm sure we'll have opportunity.
Sure, yeah. I can certainly wait around to answer more questions.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.